The Court of Justice of the European Union has ruled that Poland cannot refuse to recognise same-sex marriages concluded abroad. The case is the result of a legal battle brought by a same-sex couple who formalised their relationship in Germany, in accordance with the law in force there, and then wanted it to be recognised in Poland, even though this is contrary to the law in force in the Polish constitution. The Court of Justice of the European Union has ruled, and the left is celebrating. History is being made. The CJEU has just issued a ruling stating that Poland must recognise same-sex marriages concluded abroad. The CJEU ruling is highly controversial because the European Union wants to impose a law that is not in force in Poland. This ruling is not a neutral interpretation of the law, but a mechanism of pressure and coercion by the CJEU on member states. The whole case began when two Polish citizens who formalised their same-sex relationship in Germany and wanted it to be recognised in Poland, even though this is against the law. The registry office did not give its consent and the men took legal action. There exists no institution of same-sex marriage in Polish law, and the transcription of such a foreign marriage would be completely contrary to the law. The Constitution may be invoked here, and the authorities are probably right to do so. Until these provisions are changed, no relationship between two people of the same sex can legally be called a marriage. The Polish Constitution is crystal clear. Article 18. Marriage is a union between a woman and a man. Family, motherhood and parenthood are under the protection and care of the Republic of Poland. The men's case was referred to the Supreme Administrative Court, which, before issuing a ruling, sent a preliminary question on the matter to the Court of Justice of the European Union. Why did the Supreme Administrative Court take this course of action? This is a consequence of the destruction of the constitutional order in Poland, which manifests itself, for example, in our government's failure to recognise the judgments of the Constitutional Tribunal. The Constitution is the highest legal act, and all sources of law must be consistent with it. This is explicitly stated in Article 8 of the Constitution. Moreover, the opposition points that the CJEU does not have the competence to rule on such matters, citing the Charter of Fundamental Rights. This ruling must be treated as legally non-binding. This usurping authority has no right to issue such regulations or rulings on Polish matters. Poland and the United Kingdom have guaranteed that certain provisions will not be applied if they are not recognised by us in Poland, so same-sex marriages should not be recognised. This is contrary to the protocol attached to the Treaty of Lisbon. And this may be only the beginning. First, it is about legalising same-sex marriages contracted outside Poland, and then it is about legalising children born to such couples. I have no doubt about that. The question is whether Polish institutions will comply with the CJEU ruling, which directly imposes a law on us that is not in force in Poland. Poland has been in the European Union since 2004, and since then, the European community has come a long way, changing the ideas of its founding fathers. Now, Eurocrats are striving to centralise the European Union and, consequently, transform it into a superstate, which would significantly limit member state sovereignty. This is precisely the scenario that Poland's President Karol Nawrocki warned against at the university in Prague.
We joined the EU to benefit from the Schengen area, and we are taking advantage of it. However, the goal was not for the European Union to dictate the terms of our political system, our diet, or our upbringing of our children.
To stop this dangerous trend towards centralisation of the European Union, Karol Nawrocki presented a 5-point plan to repair the community. It provides for, first, maintaining the principle of unanimity. Second, maintaining the principle of one country, one commissioner in the composition of the European Commission. Third, restoring the presidency to the head of the government of the member state currently holding the EU presidency. This involves abolishing the position of President of the European Council. Fourth, shaping the voting system in the EU Council in such a way as to offset the excessive advantage of large EU countries. And finally, fifth, basing the functioning of the EU on pragmatic principles without ideological pressure.
Modern nations are not tribes torn by atavistic passions for domination over others, as the EU mainstream tries to portray them, but nations with millennia-old traditions, culture, and interests. The responsibility, security responsibility, and build our future without those mistakes.
Wczorajszy wykład pana
Yesterday's
prezydenta
lecture by President
Nawrockiego
Nawrocki is an
jest takim
important voice
ważnym
showing that all
głosem
countries, not only the big ones, but all countries from all parts of Europe, want to participate, can participate, and have something to say. For President Karol Nawrocki's projects to come into effect, the treaties need to be changed, and that's only possible if all member states and their parliaments agree to it. Everything is up for grabs because the geopolitical situation means that such considerations must be made. Otherwise, the European Union will head for collapse. President Karol Nawrocki's idea is also praised by politicians outside the law and justice camp. An example of this is Krzysztof Bosak from the Confederation, who sees the need to block the centralization of the Union. We need politicians who will openly question the trend towards centralization of the European Union and remind us that democratic European states have their own purpose, which is to work for the good of their nations. The government takes a completely different stance. Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs Radosław Sikorski, attempting to assume the role of the President's superior, tries to tell Karol Nawrocki what he can and cannot do. I kindly inform you that the Council of Ministers has not authorized the President to submit proposals for amendments to European treaties. We should be united. We should send a signal to the outside world that we are cooperating despite our political differences. Minister Sikorski is not doing this. Prime Minister Tusk in Poland claims to be opposed to the centralization of the European Union. At the same time, he remains a member of the European People's Party, which lobbies for changes in the community. I want to tell you that no one has any chance of outsmarting me in the European Union. Donald Tusk will therefore once again have to decide whether to choose solutions that ensure Poland's sovereignty or to be loyal to his European partners. Experience shows us to predict that Brussels may once again call the shots. I don't see Donald Tusk trying to leave the European People's Party to change its course. He fully supports what his colleagues are doing, so he shouldn't tell fairy tales that he is against what those with whom he sits in the same party are doing. President Karol Nawrocki's lecture may begin the process of healing in the European Union. In Western Europe, society is also beginning to understand that the centralization of the community, especially in the era of the Russian threat, is a road to nowhere.
Russia's aggression against Ukraine has claimed tens of thousands of lives, not only soldiers but also civilians, women, children, and the elderly. There is only one way to stop the bloodshed, by making peace. Following talks in Geneva, Ukraine has reached an agreement with the United States on key issues concerning the peace plan. After Geneva, there are fewer points. There are no longer 28, and many important elements have been included in this framework. There is still a lot to be done. Finalizing the document is very difficult, and we must do everything properly. We appreciate that most of the world is ready to help us, and that the American side is constructive. The new peace plan contains 19 points, and the Ukrainian president wants to discuss some of the sensitive issues with the US president. Kyiv is hoping for a meeting later this week. We appreciate the productive and constructive meetings held in Geneva between the Ukrainian and US delegations, as well as President Trump's steadfast efforts to end the war. Our delegations reached a common understanding on the core terms of the agreement discussed in Geneva. We now count on the support of our European partners in our further steps. We look forward to organizing a visit of Ukraine's president to the US at the earliest suitable date in November to complete final steps and make a deal with President Trump. The White House denies all rumors about what day the meeting will take place on, but, as its spokeswoman admits, the situation is changing in real time.
I spoke with Secretary Rubio at length. I spoke with the president as well. Everybody inside feels optimistic about what happened and transpired yesterday in Geneva. Secretary Rubio, Special Envoy Witkoff, the whole team really worked through the points of that 28-point peace plan that the United States authored with input from both sides, the Russians and the Ukrainians, and ultimately the vast majority of these points have been agreed upon. The Ukrainians have worked on language with us together, and you heard that from their delegation directly yesterday. So we feel as though we're in a very good place. Of course, we have to make sure that all of these points are agreed to, and then of course we're going to have to make sure the other party in this war, the Russians, agree to them as well.
However, It is the aggressor country, and above all the man at its helm, that is the biggest obstacle to ending the war he himself started.
Kluczem do rozwiązania.
As long as Putin is in power, this aggressive rhetoric will continue, and peace will be difficult. However, the United States is determined to implement the peace plan. Dan Driscoll, Secretary of the U.S. Army, has been in Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates, since yesterday. He is holding talks there with the head of Ukrainian military intelligence and a delegation from Russia.
President Trump stopped the funding of this war, but the United States is still sending or selling a big amount of weapons to NATO. We cannot do that forever, and the president wants this war to end. He is a peacetime president. That's what he's pursuing, and today he remains optimistic and hopeful, and I know our teams are working around the clock to try to get this deal to an end.
The United States and Europe are involved in bringing peace to Ukraine, but former Polish ambassador to Ukraine, Jan Piekła, says that other countries are indirectly involved in the conflict.
Są jeszcze Chiny.
There is also China, which is an ally of Russia and certainly does not care about peace. If peace were to be achieved, the Chinese would have significantly reduced room for maneuvering when it comes to occupying Taiwan. And dangerous things are happening there right now. Dangerous for the West. Donald Trump spoke yesterday on the phone with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. The conversation, described by the U.S. president as fruitful, also concerned Ukraine. Donald Trump is scheduled to visit Beijing in April next year. Amphibious units, special forces, Navy, and Air Force. An aircraft carrier, a submarine, and destroyers. Over 200 long-range missiles on standby, and a Marine Corps reserve. In short, a strike force. The buildup of American military potential in the Puerto Rico area was crowned by a visit from General Dan Kane. Above him are only the Secretary of War and the President. According to the media, Thanksgiving and Christmas passes have just been revoked. We will soon find out what the orders are. A lot can be deduced from how the Americans are moving their chess pieces. A storm is coming, and even vague statements reveal this between the lines.
We view the Maduro regime as being illegitimate, and the president has been very satisfied with the successful strikes against narco-terrorists and foreign terrorists that are illegally trafficking drugs towards the United States of America. He's not going to tolerate that, and you can expect to see those strikes continue.
The announcement of continued attacks on smugglers' boats is a diplomatic and strategic smokescreen. Washington would not have accumulated such forces and resources in one place solely for show and to fight boats. The Venezuelan dictator, oscillating between bravado and begging for peace, is well aware of this.
Listen to me. Not war, just peace. The people United States. De parte de the People Bolivarian Republic.
According to analysts, there are at least two possible scenarios. The first, less likely, is Maduro's abdication under pressure from the United States with guarantees for his safety and peaceful retirement. The second, much more likely, is limited confrontation and internal upheaval.
Another potential scenario is if the U.S. does start hitting land-based targets in Venezuela, you could have the Venezuelan armed forces decide that they will act in the interest of self-preservation and that their future is not with Maduro, that their future is actually with the democratic transition, that they've never been, the Venezuelan armed forces, it should be noted, the modern Venezuelan armed forces have never been in conflict before. So the context changes dramatically.
This could mean a military coup, all the more so because Maduro has little to no support among the population outside the capital, including among soldiers. What is more, the Venezuelan opposition, which is already hinting at possible changes, will certainly take advantage of the situation.
The cries of the murdered, tortured, and disappeared have echoed unanswered for too long. Since Maduro assumed power, more than 18,000 political prisoners have suffered. Each one serves as a testament to the regime's brutality.
The Americans are going after Maduro for his cooperation with the cartels and officially talk about the fight against drug trafficking. But there is another side to the situation surrounding Venezuela. It is about oil reserves and Caracas' close cooperation with Moscow. The United States wants to pull Venezuela economically and politically towards the West. According to Ukrainian intelligence, there are at least 120 Russian Spetsnaz soldiers in Venezuela who are training the Venezuelan army.